The stranger's blood was already soaking into the dirt when Rebecca Quinn first saw the woman sitting alone on the ridge above Palisade, Colorado, her silhouette dark against the crimson sunset of August 1878. Rebecca was riding back from the Peterson Ranch, where she had been trying to sell one of her father's horses, though the attempt had failed like everything else seemed to fail these days. The mare beneath her was tired, and Rebecca herself felt worn thin as old leather. At 23 years old, she had already buried both parents within the past year, her mother to consumption and her father to a riding accident that still felt suspicious given the condition of the cinch strap afterward. The ranch was struggling, the debts were mounting, and Rebecca had spent the better part of the day being told by Jonathan Peterson that a woman had no business trying to manage property alone. She noticed the figure on the ridge because something about the stillness caught her eye. Most people moved with purpose in these parts, always heading somewhere or doing something. But this person sat motionless, watching the sun sink toward the mountains with an intensity that spoke of either meditation or desperation. Rebecca should have ridden on. She had her own troubles, and strangers could mean complications. But something pulled at her, some recognition of loneliness that mirrored her own. She turned her mare toward the ridge, picking her way up the rocky slope. As she drew closer, Rebecca could see it was a woman, probably close to her own age, with long dark hair that hung loose past her shoulders. She wore a simple cotton dress that had once been blue but was now faded and dusty. The woman did not turn at the sound of approaching hoofbeats, though she must have heard them. "Excuse me," Rebecca called out when she was close enough. "Are you all right?" The woman finally turned her head, and Rebecca saw a face that might have been beautiful if not for the hollowness in the eyes, the gauntness in the cheeks. "I am sitting," the woman said, her voice carrying an accent Rebecca could not quite place. "Is that a crime in this country?" "No, of course not. I just thought you might need help." "Everyone needs help," the woman said, turning back to the sunset. "Few get it." Rebecca should have ridden away then. She had no help to offer, barely keeping herself afloat as she was. But instead she dismounted, ground-tied her mare, and walked over to sit beside the stranger on the rocky outcrop. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Finally, the woman spoke again. "My name is Lena Volkov. I came here from Russia with my husband 3 months ago. He is dead now, 2 weeks. I am sorry," Rebecca said quietly. "I am Rebecca Quinn, lost my father 4 months back." Lena nodded slowly. "Then you understand the emptiness?" "Yes." They sat together until the sun disappeared completely and the first stars began to emerge. In that shared silence, something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. When Rebecca finally rose to leave, she looked down at Lena and made a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. "You have somewhere to stay tonight." Lena shook her head. "Come with me then. I have a ranch about 3 miles west of town. It is not much, but there is a roof and food." Lena studied Rebecca's face in the gathering darkness, searching for something. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because she stood and nodded. "Thank you." Rebecca helped Lena up onto the mare behind her, and they rode through the darkness toward the Quinn ranch. Rebecca could feel Lena's arms wrapped around her waist, holding on with a grip that spoke of exhaustion and relief. The warmth of another person pressed against her back felt strange after so many months alone. The ranch house was dark when they arrived, as Rebecca had left it that morning. She lit a lantern and showed Lena inside, suddenly self-conscious about the state of the place. Dishes sat unwashed in the basin. Dust covered most surfaces. The whole house carried the feeling of a place where someone was barely surviving rather than living. "I know it is a mess," Rebecca said. I have been meaning to clean, but with trying to manage the horses and the cattle and everything else. It is fine, Lena said. Better than where I have been sleeping. Which was where? A boarding house in town. But my money ran out 3 days ago. The owner, he said I could stay if I worked for him, but the work he wanted. Lena did not finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear enough. Rebecca felt anger flash through her. Jonathan Peterson? No, a man named Wallace. He runs a place on the north side. I know it, Rebecca said grimly. Wallace's boarding house had a reputation, and not a good one. Well, you will not be going back there. You can stay here as long as you need. The words were out before Rebecca fully considered them, but once spoken, she did not want to take them back. Something about Lena's presence in the house already made it feel less empty, less suffocating. Over the next few days, an easy routine developed between them. Rebecca worked the ranch while Lena recovered her strength and took over the household tasks. Lena proved to be an excellent cook, transforming Rebecca's meager supplies into meals that actually tasted like something worth eating. She cleaned the house until it shone, washed and mended Rebecca's worn clothes, and tended a small vegetable garden that had gone wild with neglect. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch and talk. Rebecca learned that Lena had grown up in St. Petersburg, the daughter of a minor nobleman who had fallen on hard times. She had married Dmitri Volkov when she was 19, believing his promises of a better life in America. They had traveled to Colorado with dreams of starting a freight business, but Dmitri had been killed in a wagon accident less than 2 months after their arrival, leaving Lena alone in a foreign country with almost no money and barely any English. Your English sounds perfect to me, Rebecca said one evening. I studied it since I was a child, Lena explained. My father believed education was important, even for daughters, but knowing words and understanding a place are different things. This America, this West, it is so different from anything I knew. Rebecca found herself looking forward to these evening conversations more than anything else in her day. Lena was intelligent and funny, with a dry wit that caught Rebecca off guard and made her laugh for the first time in months. And there was something else, something Rebecca tried not to examine too closely. The way her heart sped up when Lena smiled at her. The way she found excuses to stand close when they were working together in the kitchen. The way she hated riding out to check the cattle because it meant leaving Lena alone at the house. It was dangerous, these feelings. Rebecca had known since she was 15 that her interests lay in directions that decent society did not permit. She had learned to hide it, to never let anyone see. But Lena made her want to stop hiding. One morning, about 3 weeks after Lena's arrival, Rebecca was in the barn saddling her mare when she heard shouting from the house. She dropped the saddle and ran, her hand instinctively going to the old Colt revolver her father had given her. She burst through the kitchen door to find Lena backed against the counter, facing Jonathan Peterson. The rancher was a large man, running to fat in his middle years, with a red face that spoke of too much whiskey and a bad temper. "What is going on here?" Rebecca demanded. Peterson turned to her with a sneer. "Just having a conversation with your hired girl here, though I am starting to wonder what kind of services she is really providing. Get out of my house." "Now, Rebecca, do not be like that. I came here with a legitimate business proposition." "I do not care what you came here for. You are on my property uninvited and you are leaving. Now." Peterson's face darkened. "You are getting mighty high and mighty for a woman who is about to lose everything. I heard your note comes due at the bank next month. $400, isn't it?" Rebecca's stomach dropped. She had been trying not to think about the note, hoping desperately that she could sell enough horses or cattle to cover it. But Peterson was right. $400 might as well be $4,000 for all her ability to pay it. That is my business, not yours. I am trying to make it my business, Peterson said. I will pay off your note and give you another 200 besides. All you have to do is sell me this ranch. This ranch is worth 3 times that, and you know it. This ranch is worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it. And right now, I am the only buyer, unless you think someone else is going to want to deal with a woman rancher. He said the last 2 words with contempt. Get out, Rebecca said again, her hand moving to her revolver. Peterson saw the motion and laughed. You going to shoot me, Rebecca? That would solve all your problems, would it not? Except you would hang for it. He moved toward the door, then paused. You have until the end of the month to think about my offer. After that, the bank will foreclose and I will buy the place for even less at auction. He left, slamming the door behind him. Rebecca stood frozen, her hand still on the revolver, trying to control her breathing. Rebecca, Lena's voice was soft, concerned. I am fine, Rebecca said automatically, then felt her knees start to buckle. Lena was there instantly, catching her, guiding her to a chair. You are not fine, Lena said firmly. Tell me what is happening, maybe I can help. Rebecca almost laughed at that. What could Lena do? But the concern in Lena's eyes, the gentle hand on her shoulder, broke something open inside her. She told Lena everything. About the debts her father had left, most of them from gambling she had not known about the note at the bank that was coming due, about Peterson's attempts to buy the ranch for a fraction of its worth, about how she was failing at everything, losing the only home she had ever known. Lena listened without interrupting, and when Rebecca finally fell silent, she knelt in front of Rebecca's chair and took both her hands. We will find a way, Lena said. Together. Lena, there is no way. I have been over the numbers 100 times. Even if I sold every horse and every head of cattle, I would still be short. Then we must think of something else. Lena's grip on Rebecca's hands tightened. You gave me shelter when I had nothing. You asked for nothing in return. You treated me like a person, not a commodity. Do you think I am going to abandon you now? Rebecca looked into Lena's dark eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. Why do you care so much? Lena's expression softened. Do you really not know? The air between them seemed to thicken. Rebecca's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Lena must be able to hear it. I think I do, she whispered, but I am afraid to believe it. Believe it, Lena said, and leaned forward to press her lips against Rebecca's. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question more than a statement. Rebecca's first instinct was to pull away, to protect them both from the danger of this. But instead, she found herself leaning into it, her hand coming up to cup Lena's cheek. The kiss deepened, and Rebecca felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lena rested her forehead against Rebecca's. I have wanted to do that since the second week I was here, Lena admitted. But I was afraid you would throw me out, afraid I was wrong about what I saw in your eyes when you looked at me. You were not wrong, Rebecca said. I have been trying so hard not to feel this way. It is dangerous. Everything is dangerous, Lena said. Living is dangerous. But I refuse to survive Dimitri's death, survive Wallace's boarding house, survive everything I have survived, only to be too afraid to reach for something I want. Rebecca kissed her again, harder this time, with all the loneliness and longing of the past months pouring through her. They ended up on the floor, wrapped in each other's arms, kissing with an urgency that felt like drowning and being saved at the same time. Eventually, they moved to Rebecca's bedroom, to the bed where Rebecca had slept alone for so long. They undressed each other slowly, learning the landscape of each other's bodies with hands and mouths and whispered words. Lena was both gentle and fierce, shy and bold. Rebecca had never been with anyone like this before, had only dreamed about it in secret moments, but with Lena it felt natural, right, like coming home. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Rebecca felt more at peace than she had in months. But the peace could not last. Reality was still waiting and the note was still due. "What are we going to do?" Rebecca asked, her fingers tracing patterns on Lena's shoulder. "I have been thinking," Lena said. "In Russia, when my father lost his money, he survived by using what he knew. He was educated, so he became a tutor." "What do you know, Rebecca? What can you do better than anyone else?" Rebecca considered this. "I can train horses. My father taught me when I was young. I have a touch with them, people used to say. Horses that other people had given up on, I could work with them." "Then that is what we do," Lena said. "We train horses, not just break them, but really train them, make them valuable. That takes time. I have less than a month. Then we work fast and we ask for help." "I cannot ask for help," Rebecca protested. "I have nothing to pay anyone with." "Not everything requires money," Lena said. "You helped me when I had nothing. Perhaps there are others who would help you if only you asked." Over the next few days, they formulated a plan. Rebecca would focus on training the horses she already had, turning them from rough ranch stock into well-mannered mounts that could fetch premium prices. Lena would handle approaching potential buyers, using her education and her manner to present Rebecca as a specialist rather than a desperate seller. They started with the 3 youngest horses on the ranch, all about 2 years old and barely started under saddle. Rebecca worked with them from dawn until dusk, using the patient methods her father had taught her. She discovered that having Lena there made the work easier, better. Lena would sit on the fence and watch, occasionally reading aloud from books when Rebecca needed to work the horses in circles around the pen. The sound of Lena's voice seemed to calm the horses almost as much as it calmed Rebecca. In the evenings, they would retreat to the house, to the bedroom that had become their shared sanctuary. Rebecca had never imagined that such happiness could exist alongside such worry. Every night, she fell asleep in Lena's arms, grateful for this unexpected gift even as she feared losing it all. 2 weeks before the note came due, Lena took the wagon into Palisade to meet with potential buyers. Rebecca had wanted to go with her, but Lena insisted it would be better if she went alone. "Men underestimate women," Lena said. "Especially foreign women. I will use that. I will make them think they are getting something over on me, when really I am leading them exactly where I want them to go." Rebecca watched Lena drive away with her heart in her throat, torn between pride and anxiety. She threw herself into working with the horses, trying not to watch the road. Lena returned at sunset with news. She had found a buyer, a wealthy rancher from Grand Junction who was looking for well-trained horses for his daughter. He was willing to pay top dollar, but he wanted to see the horses first and would not come to Palisade for another week. "A week," Rebecca said. "The note comes due in 13 days. Then we will have the money with a few days to spare," Lena said calmly. "Trust me." Rebecca did trust her, which was perhaps the most surprising development of all. She had spent so long trusting no one, relying only on herself, that this surrender of control felt almost dizzying. The next week passed in a blur of work. Rebecca polished the horses' training until they responded to the lightest touch, until they would stand ground-tied, load into a wagon without fuss, and carry a rider with smooth, comfortable gaits. She also worked with one of the older horses, a gray gelding that had been her father's favorite. She could not bring herself to sell him, but she wanted him looking his best for the buyer's visit. Lena, meanwhile, transformed the ranch house. She sewed new curtains from fabric she somehow acquired in town. She whitewashed the fence around the main corral. She even convinced Rebecca to let her repaint the porch, making the whole place look more prosperous than it had in years. "We are selling not just horses, but a dream," Lena explained. "The dream of the West, of quality, of tradition. Rich men from the city, they want to buy that dream." The buyer arrived on schedule, a portly man named Calvin Morrison who wore an expensive suit that looked absurd in the ranch setting. His daughter Emma accompanied him, a shy girl of about 16 who clearly loved horses more than her father loved anything. Rebecca demonstrated the horses while Lena handled Morrison. Rebecca watched from the corner of her eye as Lena worked, charm and knowledge deployed with surgical precision. She spoke knowledgeably about bloodlines and training methods, dropped references to European riding traditions, made Morrison feel sophisticated for appreciating quality. Emma fell in love with all 3 horses, which helped. By the end of the afternoon, Morrison had agreed to buy all 3 for a total of $350, more than Rebecca had dared hope for. But it was not enough. Even with the money from the horses, plus what little Rebecca had saved, they would still be short nearly $50. Morrison and his daughter left with promises to return the following day with payment and a wagon to collect the horses. Rebecca and Lena sat on the porch in the fading light, holding hands, doing silent calculations that all came up short. "I could sell more horses," Rebecca said. "The breeding mare, maybe." "That mare is your future," Lena said. "Sell her and you have nothing to build on, even if we save the ranch." "Then what do we do?" Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I have something, jewelry from my mother. I have been saving it, but—" "No," Rebecca said immediately. "That is yours. That is all you have left of your family." "You are my family now," Lena said simply. "The past is the past. I want a future with you." Rebecca felt tears sting her eyes. She pulled Lena close, kissing her hair, her forehead, her lips. "We will find another way." But by the next morning, they had not found another way. Morrison arrived promptly with his payment, and Rebecca watched him load the 3 horses she had worked so hard to train. The money felt heavy in her hands, substantial but insufficient. After Morrison left, Rebecca and Lena sat at the kitchen table and counted out every cent they had. $350 from the horses, $42.30 from Rebecca's savings. Lena had $27 she had not mentioned before, saved from her time before Dimitri died. $419.30, Lena said. "It is enough." Rebecca shook her head. "The note is for $400, but there is interest and fees. The bank manager told me the total would be $437. They sat in silence, staring at the money on the table. $17.70 short. It might as well have been $1,000. There was a knock at the door. Rebecca and Lena exchanged glances. Rebecca went to answer it, half expecting Peterson come to gloat. Instead, she found Miguel Ortega, the blacksmith from town. He was a quiet man, probably in his 40s, who had always been kind to Rebecca's father. In his hands he held his hat and a folded piece of paper. "Miss Quinn," he said formally, "may I speak with you?" Rebecca invited him in. Miguel nodded politely to Lena, then turned to Rebecca. "I heard you might be in some financial difficulty," he said. "Word travels in a small town. I know it is not my business, but your father, he was good to me when I first came to Palisade, helped me when others would not." He held out the folded paper. Rebecca took it and opened it to find a bill of sale. Her father had purchased metalwork from Miguel, equipment for the ranch, and had never paid for it. The bill was for $35. Rebecca's heart sank. This was it then. Not only could they not save the ranch, but she owed even more than she had thought. "I know times are hard," Miguel continued, "so I am forgiving this debt. You do not owe me anything." Rebecca stared at him. Miguel, I cannot accept that. You did the work. Your father would have paid if he could, Miguel said. I know that, and I can afford to forgive it more than you can afford to pay it. Please, let me do this. Rebecca felt tears threaten again. Thank you, she managed. You have no idea what this means. Miguel smiled slightly. I think I do. Good luck, Miss Quinn. After he left, Rebecca and Lena looked at each other with wild hope. If the debt to Miguel was forgiven, that was $35 they did not owe. But that did not put $35 in their hands. Wait, Lena said suddenly. When did your father purchase these items? Rebecca looked at the bill of sale again. 6 months ago. Why? Because if your father owed this money when he died, it is part of his estate, yes. Part of the debts of the ranch. Rebecca saw where Lena was going. If it is part of the estate debts, and Miguel is forgiving it, then the total debt load of the estate goes down. Which means the bank might reduce what you owe, since the total liabilities have decreased. It was a thin hope, built on legal technicalities Rebecca did not fully understand. But it was something. They rode into Palisade together that afternoon, arriving at the bank just before closing. The bank manager, a prissy man named Harold Simmons, listened to their argument with obvious skepticism. But when Lena began citing legal precedents, speaking with the authority of someone educated in such matters, he finally agreed to review the estate paperwork. It took him nearly an hour, during which Rebecca and Lena sat in uncomfortable chairs and held hands where Simmons could not see. Finally, he looked up. You are correct, he said, sounding annoyed about it. The forgiveness of the debt to Mr. Ortega does reduce the total estate liability, which means the interest and fees on the note are calculated on a lower base. Your total payment would be $421.15. Rebecca could barely breathe. We have that. We have exactly that, plus a bit more. Simmons looked like he had tasted something sour. Very well. If you have the payment, I will mark the note as satisfied. They counted out the money right there, every dollar and cent they had managed to scrape together. When the last coin clinked onto Simmons's desk, Rebecca felt like she might faint from relief. Simmons prepared the paperwork with obvious reluctance, stamping the note as paid in full. He handed Rebecca the original note, now marked satisfied, with barely concealed disappointment. Congratulations, Miss Quinn. The ranch is yours, free and clear. Rebecca and Lena made it out of the bank and around the corner before Rebecca's knees finally gave out. She leaned against the wall of the general store, laughing and crying at the same time. Lena held her, laughing too, both of them giddy with relief and disbelief. We did it, Rebecca said. We actually did it. We did it, Lena agreed, then kissed her firmly on the mouth, right there on the street for anyone to see. Rebecca should have pulled away, should have been more careful, but in that moment she did not care. Let people see. Let them think what they wanted. She had her ranch, she had Lena, and the rest of the world could go hang. They rode home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The ranch looked beautiful in that light, the house and barn solid and real, theirs now in a way they had not been before. That night, they celebrated in the only way that mattered, losing themselves in each other with a joy and freedom that felt brand new. Afterward, lying in Rebecca's bed with moonlight streaming through the window, they made plans. We will build up the horse training business, Rebecca said. Really build it, make a name for ourselves, and we will expand the herd, get some good breeding stock. We will need help eventually, Lena said. We cannot do everything ourselves, I know. Maybe in a year or so when we are more established. For now, we can manage. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Rebecca, what are we going to tell people about us? Rebecca had been avoiding thinking about this. What do you want to tell them? The truth would be dangerous, Lena said carefully. People can be cruel about such things. They can, Rebecca agreed. We could say you are my housekeeper or a distant cousin who came to help with the ranch. I do not want to be your housekeeper, Lena said, or your cousin. Then what do you want to be? Lena propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at Rebecca in the moonlight. I want to be your partner, in every way that matters. I know we cannot marry, not in the eyes of the law or the church, but in our hearts, that is what I want. Rebecca reached up to cup Lena's face. Then that is what we will be. Partners. Let people think what they want about the details. We will know the truth. They sealed the promise with a kiss, and Rebecca felt a rightness settle into her bones. This was her life now. This woman, this ranch, this future they would build together. The next months were hard work, but good work. Word of Rebecca's skill with horses began to spread, and customers started coming from farther afield. Lena proved to have a sharp head for business, keeping the books, negotiating prices, managing the financial side of things while Rebecca handled the animals. They settled into a routine that felt like marriage in all the ways that mattered. They woke together, worked together, ate meals together, fell asleep in each other's arms. They had arguments about silly things and serious things, learned how to navigate each other's moods and needs. People in Palisade seemed to accept their partnership without too much comment. Two women running a ranch together was unusual but not unheard of. If anyone suspected the truth of their relationship, they kept it to themselves. Or perhaps, Rebecca thought, people simply did not want to see what was right in front of them. Jonathan Peterson tried once more to buy the ranch, showing up unannounced one afternoon about 4 months after the note had been paid off. Rebecca and Lena met him together, a united front. I will make you a fair offer this time, Peterson said. $700. The ranch is not for sale, Rebecca said. Not for 700, not for 7,000. You are being foolish, Peterson said. 2 women cannot run a place like this alone. We seem to be managing just fine, Lena said coolly. Peterson's face reddened. People are talking, you know. About you two, about how close you are. Let them talk, Rebecca said, her hand moving instinctively to her revolver. As long as they talk on their own property and not on mine. Peterson left and he did not come back. Rebecca heard later that he had lost heavily in a poker game and had to sell off some of his own land. She tried to feel sorry for him and failed. As winter settled over Colorado, Rebecca and Lena prepared for their first Christmas together. They cut a small pine tree and decorated it with paper ornaments Lena made. They cooked a feast with one of their chickens and vegetables from the root cellar. They exchanged simple gifts, a new bridle for Rebecca's mare and a wool shawl for Lena. But the real gift was the life they had built, the home they shared, the love that had grown and deepened through months of working and living together. On Christmas night, sitting by the fire with Lena's head on her shoulder, Rebecca felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. Spring brought new opportunities. A rancher from Denver contacted them about training a whole string of horses for his operation. It was more work than Rebecca and Lena could handle alone, so they hired Miguel Ortega's nephew, a young man named Louis who proved to have a good way with horses himself. Louis worked hard and asked no questions about the living arrangements at the ranch. Rebecca suspected Miguel had told him to mind his own business, for which she was grateful. Having Louis around made the work easier and gave Rebecca more time to focus on the advanced training that was becoming their specialty. By the summer of 1879, the ranch was actually profitable for the first time in years. Rebecca and Lena celebrated by taking a rare day off, riding up into the mountains to a meadow Rebecca had loved as a child. They brought a picnic and spent the afternoon lying in the grass, watching clouds drift by, talking about everything and nothing. You ever regret it?" Rebecca asked at one point. "Staying here with me instead of trying to go back to Russia or moving to a big city where you might have more opportunities." Lena rolled onto her side to look at Rebecca. "Never. Do you regret asking me to stay?" "Not for 1 second." "Then we are fortunate," Lena said. "We found each other at the right time in the right place. Not everyone gets that." They made love there in the meadow, under the wide blue sky, with nothing but the mountains to see them. It was reckless and perfect, and Rebecca thought she had never been happier. That fall they bought 2 more breeding mares, both with excellent bloodlines. Rebecca's plan was to breed horses that were not just well-trained but well-bred, animals that would command premium prices. It was a long-term strategy, but they were thinking long-term now, planning years ahead. Lena began corresponding with horse breeders back in Russia, using her language skills and her connections to arrange for the import of a Russian stallion known for its intelligence and temperament. It was an ambitious plan and an expensive one, but Rebecca trusted Lena's judgment. The second Christmas was even better than the first. They invited Louis and Miguel and a few other friends from town for dinner, filling the house with warmth and laughter. Rebecca looked around the table at these people who had become their chosen family and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. After everyone had left, Rebecca and Lena sat by the fire, and Rebecca found herself thinking about the future in new ways. "You ever think about children?" she asked Lena. Lena looked surprised. "I do sometimes, but I did not think it was something we could have." "There are ways," Rebecca said carefully. "I know a woman in Denver, someone I met through business. She and her partner, they are like us. They have a son. They found a man willing to help without asking for anything in return." Lena was quiet for a long time. "Is that something you want?" "I think it might be," Rebecca said. "Not right away, but someday. I never thought I would want children, never thought I would have a life stable enough for them. But now, with you, with the ranch doing well, I can imagine it." "I can too," Lena admitted. "I always thought I would have children with Dmitri. When he died, I thought that chance had died with him, but maybe it did not." They talked late into the night, planning and dreaming, imagining what their family might look like. It was not a decision to be made lightly or quickly, but knowing they were both thinking about it felt significant. The Russian stallion arrived in the spring of 1880, after months of arrangements and expense. He was a beautiful animal, gray dappled with white, with an intelligent eye and a calm temperament despite his long journey. Rebecca named him Nevsky, after Lena's favorite saint. Breeding Nevsky to their best mares became the foundation of their business. The resulting foals were extraordinary, combining the best traits of both parents. Word spread, and people began coming from across Colorado and beyond to buy Quinn horses. The ranch prospered in ways Rebecca's father could never have imagined. They expanded the barn, built additional corrals, bought more land. Rebecca hired 2 more workers, both young men from families she trusted. The operation grew from a struggling homestead to a respected horse ranch. Through it all, Rebecca and Lena remained partners in every sense. They still worked side by side every day, still shared the bedroom where they had first come together, still found time to sit on the porch at sunset and talk about their days. People in Palisade had long since accepted them as a unit. No one questioned it anymore when they went places together, when they made business decisions jointly, when they spoke of the ranch as ours rather than mine. Whether people understood the full nature of their relationship or simply chose not to think about it too hard, Rebecca could not say. But the absence of outright hostility felt like acceptance enough. In the fall of 1880, Lena approached Rebecca with a serious expression. "I have been thinking about what we discussed," she said. "About children, And if you still want that, I think I might know how we could arrange it." They contacted the woman Rebecca had mentioned in Denver, who put them in touch with a man willing to help. He was a widower, a decent man who had fathered children of his own and understood what they were asking. The arrangement was delicate and required discretion all around, but it was made. Lena became pregnant in early 1881. The pregnancy was not easy, complicated by morning sickness that lasted well into the second trimester, and by anxiety about how to present the situation to the community. They finally decided to tell people that Lena had been briefly married before coming to Colorado, a husband who had died young. It was close enough to the truth to be believable. Rebecca was protective to the point of being overbearing, trying to keep Lena from doing any heavy work, worrying constantly about her health. Lena tolerated this for a few weeks before finally putting her foot down. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she said firmly. "I will not spend 7 more months sitting idle." They compromised, with Lena taking on lighter tasks but remaining active in running the ranch. Rebecca found herself falling even more deeply in love during this time, watching Lena bloom with pregnancy, imagining the family they were creating. The baby came in October of 1881, delivered by a midwife from Grand Junction after a long and difficult labor. Rebecca stayed by Lena's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, feeling utterly helpless in the face of Lena's pain. When the baby finally arrived, healthy and screaming, Rebecca felt her heart expand in ways she had not known possible. It was a boy, red-faced and furious at being born with a shock of dark hair like Lena's. "He is perfect," Rebecca whispered, watching Lena cradle the baby against her chest. "He is ours," Lena said, tears streaming down her face. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names endlessly over the past months but had never quite decided. Now, looking at the baby's face, Rebecca knew. "Robert," she said, "after my father, Robert Quinn." Lena smiled. "Robert Quinn, yes, that is perfect." Robert was a good baby, easy-tempered and healthy. He seemed to love being outside, quieting immediately whenever they took him out to the barn or the corrals. Rebecca found herself doing less work and more baby watching, content to stand with Robert in her arms and observe while others handled the horses. The ranch hands treated the situation with careful respect. If any of them had questions about Robert's parentage or the unusual family structure, they kept them to themselves. Lewis, in particular, became a favorite of Robert's, making faces that got the baby laughing from an early age. Lena recovered her strength slowly, and Rebecca was patient, taking on more of the household tasks, learning to manage bottles and diapers alongside horse training. They were exhausted most of the time those first few months, taking turns with night feedings, napping when they could. But even through the exhaustion, Rebecca felt happier than she had ever been. This was her family. Lena and Robert, the ranch, the life they had built together against all odds. When Robert was 6 months old, Rebecca and Lena took him up to the meadow where they had first talked about having children. They spread a blanket and let Robert roll around on it, grabbing at grass and flowers, delighted by everything. "We did it," Lena said, watching Robert with a soft smile. "We made a family." "We did," Rebecca agreed, "and I would not change a single thing." They stayed there until sunset, the 3 of them together, and Rebecca thought about that evening 4 years ago when she had seen a lone woman sitting on a ridge at sunset. How her life had changed in that moment when she decided to approach instead of riding on. How everything she now treasured had grown from that single choice. The years that followed were full and good. Robert grew into a bright, curious child who loved horses as much as his mother's did. They taught him to ride almost as soon as he could walk, and he took to it naturally. The ranch continued to thrive. their horses gaining a reputation across the western states for quality and reliability. When Robert was 3, Lena became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the summer of 1885 they welcomed a daughter. Rebecca insisted on naming her Natasha after Lena's mother. With 2 children, the house felt full in the best possible way. Rebecca converted one of the spare rooms into a nursery, and they hired a local girl to help with childcare so Lena could return to managing the business side of the ranch. People in Palisade had long since stopped questioning the Quinn household. The 2 women raising children together, running a successful business, living as partners in all but legal name. If anyone still harbored suspicions or disapproval, they were smart enough to keep it quiet. The Quinn Ranch was an important part of the local economy now, employing several people, buying supplies from town merchants, contributing to the community. Robert started school in 1886, and Rebecca found herself worrying about what other children might say or ask. But Robert seemed untroubled by his unusual family, explaining matter-of-factly to anyone who asked that he had 2 mothers, and that was just how things were. The teacher, a young woman named Sarah who had only recently arrived from Boston, came to visit the ranch one afternoon. Rebecca braced herself for problems, but Sarah surprised her. "I wanted to let you know that Robert is doing wonderfully in school," Sarah said. "He is bright and kind and gets along well with the other children." "We are glad to hear it," Rebecca said carefully. Sarah hesitated, then continued. "I also wanted to say that I think what you 2 have built here is remarkable. I know not everyone would agree, but I believe children need love and stability, and Robert clearly has both of those things." Rebecca felt tension she had not realized she was carrying finally release. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Sarah became a friend after that, someone who understood and accepted their family without judgment. She sometimes came to the ranch for Sunday dinners, and Rebecca and Lena began to build a wider circle of chosen family. As the children grew, Rebecca and Lena grew with them. They adapted and changed, learning to balance their roles as mothers with their roles as partners and business owners. It was not always easy. They still had arguments, still had moments of frustration or doubt. But they had built something strong enough to weather those storms. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, they would sometimes sit on the porch as they had in the early days. The ranch looked different now, more prosperous, more established. But the sunset looked the same, painting the Colorado sky in familiar shades of gold and crimson. "You remember that first evening?" Rebecca asked one such night. "When I saw you sitting on that ridge." "I remember every detail," Lena said. "I was so lost that day, so alone. I was seriously thinking about walking into the desert and just not coming back." Rebecca took Lena's hand, lacing their fingers together. "I am so glad you did not." "I am glad you stopped," Lena said. "Glad you sat beside me, glad you stayed." "I never wanted to leave," Rebecca said. "From that first moment, something told me you were important, that you were going to change my life." "We changed each other's lives," Lena said. "We saved each other." Rebecca thought about that. It was true in so many ways. Lena had saved her from loneliness, from losing the ranch, from a life half lived in fear and hiding. And Rebecca had saved Lena from desperation, from Wallace's boarding house, from being alone in a foreign land. But more than that, they had built something together that neither could have built alone. A home, a family, a legacy. Robert was 8 now and Natasha was 3. The ranch employed 6 hands and was considering expanding again. They had weathered droughts and hard winters, market fluctuations and difficult foals. They had raised children and horses, built a business and a life, and through it all they had each other. In 1889, when Robert was 9 and Natasha was 5, Rebecca took a rare trip to Denver for a horse sale. She was gone for 3 days, and when she returned, she had news. "I met someone interesting," she told Lena that evening. "A lawyer who specializes in property law. He told me about something called a joint tenancy arrangement. It is not marriage, but it is a way for two people to own property together with rights of survivorship." Lena looked up from her mending. "What does that mean?" "It means if something happens to me, the ranch automatically becomes yours. Not through inheritance that could be contested, but as a matter of law, and vice versa." They had been partners for over 10 years, but this felt significant. A legal recognition of what they had built together, as much recognition as the law would allow. "I want to do it," Lena said. "I want everything official. For us, for the children." They made the trip to Grand Junction together to sign the papers, bringing the children along and making it a family outing. Robert and Natasha were confused about why signing papers was exciting, but they enjoyed the trip to the city and the rare treat of restaurant meals. Standing in the lawyer's office, watching Lena sign her name next to Rebecca's, Rebecca felt a completion she had not known she was missing. They could not marry in a church or before a judge, but this was their wedding in the way that mattered. A legal joining, a formal recognition of their partnership. That night, in their hotel room with the children asleep in the adjoining room, Rebecca and Lena made love with a tenderness and intensity that felt like renewing vows. Afterward, Rebecca lay awake, listening to Lena breathe, thinking about how far they had come. 11 years since that sunset on the ridge. 11 years of building and growing and loving. They had created a family, a business, a life worth living. They had faced down prejudice and poverty, had survived and thrived against odds that should have crushed them, and they had done it together. The next decade brought more changes and more growth. Robert grew into a serious young man who loved horses but dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Rebecca and Lena encouraged this, saving money to send him to university when the time came. Natasha was more interested in the business side, showing an early aptitude for numbers and negotiation that reminded Rebecca of Lena. In 1893, Lena became pregnant one final time at the age of 37. It was unexpected, and both women worried about the risks at Lena's age. But the pregnancy proceeded smoothly, and in early 1894 they welcomed another son. They named him Daniel, and he was doted on by his older siblings. The ranch continued to prosper. Quinn horses were now known across the West, with buyers coming from as far as California and Texas. Rebecca had achieved her dream of establishing a true breeding program, with bloodlines carefully tracked and managed. Lena had turned the business side into a model of efficiency, keeping detailed records and building relationships with buyers and suppliers. They had also become pillars of the Palisade community despite, or perhaps because of, their unconventional household. They employed local people, supported local businesses, contributed to community projects. When the school needed repairs, they donated money and materials. When neighbors faced hardship, they offered help. Sarah, the teacher who had first reached out in friendship, eventually married and moved away, but other friendships developed. The new minister, a forward-thinking man from Chicago, seemed to have no problem with their household and even invited them to church socials. Not everyone in town approved, Rebecca knew, but enough people either accepted or tolerated them that they could live openly and peacefully. Robert left for university in Denver in 1896, and Rebecca cried for a week despite trying to hide it. Their son, the baby she had held on the day of his birth, was going out into the world, but she was proud too. He was going to make something of himself, become someone who could help people and animals. Natasha stepped up to take on more responsibility at the ranch, working alongside Rebecca with the horses and learning everything Rebecca could teach her. She had a particular gift for training young horses, a patience and intuition that reminded Rebecca of herself at that age. Daniel was still young, only 3 when Robert left, but he was already showing signs of having inherited the family's love of horses. He followed Rebecca and Natasha around the corrals, asking endless questions, begging to be allowed to help. The turn of the century came and went with celebration. Rebecca and Lena hosted a party at the ranch, inviting friends and employees and neighbors. They toasted the new century, wondering what it would bring, grateful for what the old century had given them. In 1902, Robert graduated from veterinary school and returned to Palisade to open his own practice. Rebecca and Lena could not have been prouder. Their son, a doctor of veterinary medicine, serving the community they loved. Natasha, now 18, had taken over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch. She had her mother's business sense and her other mother's way with horses, and Rebecca was content to step back and let the next generation lead. Daniel, at 9, was already riding better than most adults. Rebecca suspected he would be the one to truly carry on the horse training legacy, while Natasha focused on the business side and Robert pursued his own career. Rebecca was 52 now, Lena 51. They had been together for 24 years, longer than many legal marriages lasted. They had weathered everything life could throw at them and had come through stronger. One evening, Lena found Rebecca in the barn, standing in front of the old gray gelding stall. The horse was ancient now, nearly 30, but still healthy and alert, thinking about old times. Lena asked, slipping an arm around Rebecca's waist. "Always," Rebecca said. "This was my father's horse, the last connection I have to him." "He would be proud of what you have built," Lena said. "What we have built." Rebecca leaned into Lena's embrace. "I hope so. I like to think he would approve of all of it. The ranch, the business, you, the children." "The children definitely," Lena said with a smile. "He would have loved being a grandfather." They stood together in the quiet barn, listening to horses shifting in their stalls, breathing the familiar smells of hay and leather and horse. This was their kingdom, built from nothing but determination and love. "You ever regret it?" Rebecca asked. "Staying here instead of going to a city where we might have been more anonymous, more free. We are free here," Lena said. "As free as we could be anywhere. This is our home, Rebecca, our real home. Why would I ever regret that?" Rebecca turned to kiss Lena properly, still feeling that spark after all these years. They had grown older together, their bodies changing, hair graying, lines deepening on their faces. But the essential connection between them had only strengthened with time. In 1905, Natasha married a young man from Grand Junction, a banker's son who understood that he was marrying into the family business, and that Natasha would always be a working partner at the ranch. The wedding was held at the ranch, with half of Palisade in attendance, and Rebecca and Lena jointly gave the bride away. Robert married 2 years later, a sweet woman who shared his love of animals. They settled in Palisade, and soon Rebecca and Lena were grandparents, doting on Robert's children with the same love they had given their own. Daniel grew into a fine young man, taking over the horse training completely by the time he was 20. He had a gift that surpassed even Rebecca's, and horses seemed to trust him instinctively. Under his care, the Quinn Ranch's reputation grew even further. Rebecca and Lena gradually stepped back from active management, content to advise and support while the next generation led. They had earned their rest, though neither was very good at actually resting. There were always horses to watch, grandchildren to spoil, projects to oversee. In 1912, 34 years after they had first met on that ridge at sunset, Rebecca and Lena sat on their porch and watched another sunset. The view was the same, though the ranch itself had changed almost beyond recognition. The modest house of Rebecca's father had been expanded and improved. The single barn had become 3. The small corral had multiplied into a complex of training facilities, but some things remained constant. The mountains on the horizon, the quality of the light as the sun went down, the feeling of Lena's hand in Rebecca's. "We have had a good life," Lena said quietly. "The best life," Rebecca agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. Do you remember that first evening? When you sat beside me on the ridge? I remember thinking you looked so alone, so lost. And I remember feeling like I needed to do something, even though I barely had my own life together." "I was planning to end it," Lena admitted, something she had never quite said outright before. "That evening, I was going to wait until dark and then walk out into the desert and just keep walking." Rebecca's hand tightened on Lena's. "I am so glad I stopped." "I am glad you sat beside me," Lena said, "and I am glad you never left." "How could I leave?" Rebecca said. "You were always meant to be my home." They sat together as the sun disappeared and the stars emerged, 2 old women who had built an empire and a family, who had loved each other through everything life could offer. Their children and grandchildren were inside, making dinner, filling the house with noise and life. The horses were settled in their barns. The ranch was prosperous and secure. Everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed had come to pass. They had beaten the odds, survived the hardships, created a legacy that would last generations. And it had all started with a cowboy seeing a woman alone at sunset, sitting beside her, and never leaving again. As the years continued to pass, Rebecca and Lena settled into a comfortable old age. They were fixtures in Palisade now, the 2 old ladies of the Quinn ranch, respected and even beloved by most of the community. The younger generation no longer questioned their relationship, accepting it as simply how things were. They spent their days watching grandchildren and great-grandchildren play in the yards where their own children had played. They advised Daniel on ranch matters when asked, but otherwise let him run things his own way. They attended church socials and town events, always together, always a unit. On their 40th anniversary of meeting, though they could not publicly celebrate it as such, they took a private trip back to the ridge where Rebecca had first seen Lena sitting alone. It took them longer to make the climb than it once had, their bodies stiff with age, but they made it. Sitting on that familiar outcrop, looking at the same view they had shared 40 years before, Rebecca took Lena's weathered hand in her own. "If I could go back and do it all again," Rebecca said, "I would not change a single thing." "Not one?" Lena asked with a smile. "Not even the time I nearly burned down the kitchen trying to cook your birthday dinner," Rebecca laughed. "Not even that. Every moment, good and bad, led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." They stayed until sunset, watching the sky turn those familiar shades of gold and crimson, remembering and grateful and still deeply in love. When Rebecca passed away in 1918 at the age of 68, Lena was holding her hand. It was peaceful in their shared bed, surrounded by children and grandchildren. Rebecca's last words were, "I love you," directed at Lena with a clarity that left no doubt. Lena mourned deeply but not desperately. They had been given 40 years together, 4 decades of love and partnership and family. That was more than most people ever got, and certainly more than either of them had expected on that sunset evening when they first met. Lena lived another 5 years, remaining active in the ranch's affairs and close to her children and grandchildren. She never considered leaving Colorado or the ranch. This was where she and Rebecca had built their life, where their love story had unfolded, and this was where she wanted to stay. When Lena passed in 1923, also peacefully and surrounded by family, she was buried beside Rebecca in the Palisade Cemetery. Their graves sat together under a cottonwood tree, the headstones reading simply Rebecca Quinn, 1850–1918, beloved mother, and Lena Quinn, 1856–1923, beloved mother. The ranch continued under Daniel's management, and eventually his children's, the Quinn name remaining synonymous with quality horses well into the 20th century. The story of how it all began, of the cowboy who saw a woman alone at sunset and sat beside her and never left, became family legend, passed down through generations. None of the children or grandchildren ever knew the full truth of Rebecca and Lena's relationship, though some surely suspected. But they all knew the important parts. That two women had loved each other deeply, had built something lasting together, had created a family and a legacy against all odds. That love, in the end, was what mattered. Not the gender of the people loving, not the legal recognition or lack thereof, not the approval or disapproval of society. Just the simple, profound fact of two people choosing each other every day for 40 years. The ranch still stands today, though it has changed hands outside the family now. But in Palisade, old-timers still tell stories about the Quinn Ranch in its heyday, about the two remarkable women who ran it, about the love story that started with a moment of kindness on a ridge at sunset. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light is just right, people claim they can still see two figures sitting together on that ridge, watching the sun go down over the Colorado mountains, holding hands for all eternity.